I'm here with Andrew, and he's a good friend that I met through church, and I'm going to ask him about mental health. And this is May, it's Mental Health Awareness, and he's been in the church, and so I'm going to ask a couple questions. So thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely.
First off, do you have any history of mental illness, or anybody that you love have history?
Well, I think everybody that I love has some sort of history with it. Me personally, I've wrestled with depression and panic disorder. It's not something that I grew up with. It was something that I didn't deal with until actually I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I went through cancer treatment, had a allergic reaction to one of the medicines that they were giving me, the steroid, and it really messed with my brain chemistry, and I became suicidal, really scared, and dealt with depression that was just very significant. And so since then, some trauma with going through treatment at a young age, have had panic disorder and wrestled with that. So it's been a very real thing that I've wrestled with. My wife also has dealt with some anxiety things, and then we've kind of got the wide spectrum in our friend group. I think we've all kind of loved on each other, and between bipolar disorder and depression and anxiety, I mean, we've got it kind of all represented. So
Yeah.
it's very real in my world, but it's also the reality of our life, and we live with it. So yeah.
Cool. As far as there's been a lot of stigmas of mental health within the church that I've personally experienced with having depression, and told that I don't have enough faith, I should pray my way out of it, feeling really anxious about actually going into church, and wondering if I measure up and stuff. What would you say to people that have that feeling of not being good enough to go into church, or the view of mental illness within the church?
Yeah, I think it's a really dynamic subject right now in the church. I think you're right. For a really long time, the church has done a really poor job of, and like Big C Church all over the world has just done a really poor job of understanding or acknowledging that mental health disorders are a real thing. I think that kind of classic stigma of like, you're not praying enough, you're not trusting the Holy Spirit, you should have joy, all those things that, like, it's really easy to hear those things when you hear certain scriptures, and sometimes it feels judgmental, and so a lot of people have actually had trauma from that. But I do believe that the church, some churches are starting to recognize that we're doing it wrong. And they're coming to terms with the fact that we need to reassess how we're looking at this and how we're talking about it. So I think there's a change happening in a lot of places, but it's still a problem in a lot of places. So yeah, I think that as far as the history, we've done a really poor job. We're getting there, though. We're gonna start changing the conversation, and doing things like this helps to change that conversation, to recognize that prayer is powerful, and I believe that we have a God who can heal and who can step in and intervene, but we also have doctors, and we also have a God who created those people, who can help and sit through and process things with us, and counseling is an exceptional tool, and I just think there's a lot of things that the church can learn. So
good. If somebody was hurting today, what would you tell them?
Well, you're not alone. That's the first one. I think the scariest thing about depression, anxiety, suicide, any disorder like that, it feels so lonely when you're wrestling it, because it's internal, and you the commentary that you tell yourself is so loud, and so deep, and it's hard to let people in, and it's really hard to get people to understand, because a lot of times I think people wrestle with things that, well, there's no reason to be sad, right? There's no reason to be anxious, But that's the reality of anxiety and depression, is that you don't have to have a reason. Sometimes it's just your brain. And a lot of people wrestle with this. A lot of people. And so you're not alone. Know that first. And then get help. Seek help. Talk to someone you trust that's close to you, or call a professional. Just take the step and do it. It's hard to do it sometimes, but just take the step. You're not alone. Get help.
Yeah. Great. On a little lighter note, there's, you know, mental health is a big scope. So you have depression and anxiety, bipolar, and then also it encompasses like fears and phobias, and they're very real. But do you happen to have one? Like Hector has one with flying, and he has white coat syndrome. So do you have one?
What is white coat syndrome?
So he his blood pressure skyrockets when he goes into the doctor.
Yeah, I do that same thing. Trauma, gotta love that. I'm scared of flying. I've gotten better at it over the years. But I had to learn the science. Like, I had to have somebody who actually knows how to fly explain the science to me, and I'll sit at the window and I just tell myself how air works. For whatever reason that functions. The other thing is I can't watch scary movies anymore because my imagination runs far too heavy, and I chase myself out of rooms for weeks.
Really?
After, like you Walking Dead. You're a Walking Dead fan. I can't do it.
Okay.
I can't watch The Walking Dead because I will chase myself out of every dark room for weeks on end after I watch it.
Okay.
So there you go. I'm a scaredy cat.
Well, everybody. Not everybody likes Walking Dead, I know for sure. Especially in the church world.
Yeah, well. But I watch Game of Thrones, so I'm
yay!
the biggest sinner.
And if you and Brienne were gonna just chill and watch Netflix some night, what would be your poison of choice?
We struggle to find shows that we can watch together because I don't like scary movies. Well, she thinks that Game of Thrones is scary. Okay. So like we can't watch that together. So that's, so we find the balance. What we found is that we really love watching Queer Eye.
Oh.
That is one of our favorite shows.
Yeah.
It is so much fun to watch. And then also Once Upon a Time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It's very Disney. It's very good. And that we can watch together.
Great.
And comedy specials.
Great. Yeah. Great. Can you tell us where you are working? And
Yeah. So I'm at a church in Longmont, North Longmont, that's called Faith Community Lutheran. It's a small church that's been on 66 on the way up to Estes for, I think, 40 years now. About 500 people a weekend. They're a great little church with a ton of history that is really pushing forward, and they're doing some really cool stuff with blending real traditional elements with very contemporary worship. So it's a cool vibe. It's something I've never seen in the church myself as far as how much they're willing to blend. So yeah, it's been a good fit.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. All right. This was Andrew Wittenauer, and check him out down at the Longmont Church that he just mentioned. And again, if you need anything for mental health and mental illness, just reach out, and we hope that this helped. Thank you.
Thanks.